Welcome. Thanks for joining today's presentation by TrueSky called Advanced Budgeting, Planning, and Forecasting for Business Central. My name's Stephanie, and I'll be going through the presentation today. I also have my colleague Alan, who will be doing a demo for us shortly. Quick overview of the agenda. We'll start with why you need an application. Then we'll move into why that application should be TrueSky, followed by a little bit of understanding of TrueSky's key pillars and some of the things that were considered in TrueSky's design. Then we'll give you an overview of some of the business processes that TrueSky can do, followed by a demo and a little bit about next steps. All right, so why you need an application. I'll take a guess that most of you on today's call are using Excel to manage the budgeting process. Excel really is a very powerful tool. It's extremely flexible, lets you model almost any business process imaginable, has very powerful calculations, rich presentation layer, and ultimately a really high user adoption. Everyone knows how to use Excel. However, Excel is not perfect. It is not a database. There's a lot of manual work and administration required to get your Excel spreadsheet set up for budgeting. There's no workflow, lack of audit trails, and ultimately a lot of version control issues. A lot of studies have been done that show 90% of all Excel spreadsheets have errors. Now, hopefully your errors aren't on this magnitude. JP Morgan had a $6 billion trading loss due to an Excel copy and paste error. Fidelity was off by $2.6 billion because they forgot a minus sign. And it's quite easy to see how these errors can happen when Excel is your primary tool. Now, why should you look at something like TrueSky? Now, why TrueSky to manage your budgeting process? TrueSky lets you focus on strategy and analysis instead of the drudgery of managing the budgeting and forecasting process. So instead of having to deal with the administration and setup, with TrueSky, your users can focus on things that matter. And there's three key user groups that TrueSky provides value for. The first are contributors. These are the people that are entering budgets, providing information. With TrueSky, we reduce the amount of effort and time that it takes them to manage the budgeting process. The second key group is the finance team, and TrueSky minimizes the amount of administrative work, again, that drudgery of managing the process, and instead increases quality. And the third group are the decision makers. TrueSky provides really meaningful and rich information that allows them to reduce risk and avoid surprises. I'll now go into TrueSky's key pillars. And you'll see up here, there are three key pillars that TrueSky was designed with. The first, leveraging Excel. Now, I know we just talked about how Excel is not the perfect solution for budgeting, but it does have a lot of great qualities. So there's that rapid user adoption, really minimal need for training, the depth and breadth of functionality that Excel brings, ease of use, and flexibility. And that's why TrueSky uses Excel as the end user interface. However, we've brought literally hundreds of enhancements that take Excel to that next level and make it a true enterprise solution. The second key pillar is empowering the finance group. Now with TrueSky, you'll have centralized data, so everything's in one place. Complete audit trails so you can see what changes were made and when. Security, of course, application level security as well as data security. Real-time merging, so you're not sending spreadsheets around and dealing with that difficult merge process. You'll also have direct integration to your data. So we can integrate directly with Dynamics Business Central, maybe a CRM or an HR system. So you have direct access to the data you need for your budgeting process. The third and final key pillar is facilitating knowledge. With TrueSky, you can very easily involve more people in the budget. roll it out to more of your organization and people who know the budget best. And you can do this without increasing the administrative effort. TrueSky also lets you capture both qualitative and quantitative information, so you have a better understanding of the budget and what's included. We'll also give you tools to do deep dive analysis, actually do analysis on information within another data source like Business Central, maybe on the web or anything like that. Ultimately, your budget will have a greater sense of accuracy and give you that decision level information to make decisions that move your business forward. On screen, we have a quick summary of some of the things that TrueSky can help with. TrueSky is a complete budgeting, planning, forecasting, reporting, analytics, and dashboarding solution. On the budgeting side, obviously, we can handle all financial and operational budgeting from compensation, sales forecasting, expense budgeting, CapEx budgeting, projects, production, inventory, and really any structured data capture. And then on the reporting side, we can handle not only budget reports, but also your full set of financial reports, presentation quality, income statements, balance sheets, cash flows, budget to actual reports, all those different things that you need. With that being said, I will pass it over to Alan for the demo and let him take it from here.
So right now, on your screen, you should be seeing Excel. And that's intentional because, again, keep in mind, TrueSky allows you to continue to use Excel as your end user interface. But unlike Excel, we don't store the data in the workbook or worksheet itself. Everything we do is database driven. So, home, insert, page layout, these are all the traditional ribbon bar menu items that you're used to working with in Excel. But then here comes TrueSky. First thing I want to point out is that TrueSky supports multiple different languages. So if you have operations that are multinational in nature, or again, you just need to have multiple languages, we support that. In my example here, I have language packs installed for English, Spanish, and French. So this is what allows you to have different users working in an interface that is familiar to them, yet all the data, again, is stored in the same way. We also deal with the fact that different countries tend to display numbers differently when it comes in terms of the thousand separator as well as the decimal separator, and whether they're using spaces or periods or commas. So we handle all of that translation as well within TrueSky. But what I really want to focus on is this little button called the Hub. The Hub is a central area where an end user can go to see what they have to access. They have access to within TrueSky, what they can work on. Okay, and the two tabs I want to focus on first are assignments and reports. Assignments are input sheets. They're how you get data into TrueSky. So as an example, I have an assignment under my annual budget cycle folder to work on office expenses and travel expenses. And when it comes to reports, as an example under financial statements, I have access to these for financial statements. Okay, this is what I see when I log in to TrueSky. These 4 reports and these 2 input tasks. If another user logs into TrueSky, they may only see 1 input task and 1 report, as an example. Everything we do in TrueSky dynamically renders itself to the individual user based on their security settings and what has been published by an administrator. This is how we spoon feed usage of TrueSky to your end users, and this is also one of the reasons why users can pick up working with TrueSky so rapidly, because again, they only ever have to worry about what they see here in the hub. They don't have to worry about going to a shared drive and trying to figure out which spreadsheet is mine and where do I save it, and why is that named differently than what I was expecting, and so forth. It's all right here for them. Well, I'm going to focus on office expenses for the start of this presentation, and we give you control of things like you don't have today in Excel. So as an example, start and end dates. You can set up TrueSky such that people cannot start working on the budget until after a date that you prescribed. Now again, that's usually not the issue. People tend not to start right away. They tend to procrastinate. But more importantly, you can lock people out from making changes once a budget cycle is complete. So if you're getting ready to do your big presentation to the board and working on the budget as an example, you don't want numbers to be changing randomly. So again, you have that ability to lock people out. When it comes down here to level, want to point out that TrueSky has a complete workflow approval engine built into it that allows you to route your numbers through various levels of approval. Again, ignore the concept that we're using a spreadsheet for capture. We're all about approving the data. So you can do things that are very complex that tend to happen in more larger organizations. As an example, let's say I have to submit data for Department A and Department B. Well, TrueSky can be structured such that the data I enter for Department A goes to one manager, while the data I enter for Department B goes to another manager for approval, and say IT spend goes to the IT manager for approval. Yet all of those numbers, once that next level approve it all comes back to, say, one final approver. So again, we handle things like dotted line approvals or split approvals, depending on what the situation may be. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my assignment for office expenses. And what the system is doing is going out to the server and bringing back and rendering a template specifically for me and what I'm allowed to see and to work with. Now in the first tab, we tend to put instructions. Again, people don't work with budgeting and forecasting every day, so we like to give them some reminders about what the process is, when are things due, so on and so forth. It's kind of in their face, makes it a little bit more easy for them to get their heads around. But what I'm really focused on is this tab here that's called Office Expenses. Now, the first thing I want to point out down here, these are my filters, my dimensions, my slicers. Different people use different terms for this kind of thing. So again, whatever you're familiar with. In my example here, I have a slicer for location. I have a slicer for department. I have a slicer for currency because TrueSky not only supports budgeting in multiple currencies, we also support, or in multiple languages, we also support budgeting in multiple currencies. And I have a slicer for version. Again, we support unlimited version of your budget. Start with version 1, copy to version 2, copy to version 99, whatever the case may be. These are my slicers, my filters for my presentation for this business process. Your slicers, your filters are going to be completely different, going to be completely configurable up to you based on your organization, what kind of budgeting and forecasting you do, what your different data sources may be, and how you like to capture it, and the business process. So as an example, if I was doing revenue forecasting, I might have a slicer for customer or product line. If I'm doing compensation forecasting, I might have a slicer for employee. Now, if I wanted to work with a different location as an example, I could click my little edit button here and up would pop a list of the locations that I have access to. Now this list is driven through security as well. So if I don't get access to, say, the Seattle warehouse, I won't even see it on the list right here. And these kind of views are really useful for doing analysis and reporting later on, because I can say, you know what, instead of just bringing back data from one location, I want to combine my Washington operations with my BC operations and my San Diego office. And now this data would either, depending on the layout of the worksheet or the report, would either aggregate all of these numbers to me into one number, or maybe lay out these different locations for me side by side on columns. One other thing I'd like to point out is this list can be automatically integrated to a back-end data source. That data source could be your ERP system, it could be your CRM system if you have a custom order entry system, whatever the case may be, such that when you add a new location, and the same would hold true for adding new departments, adding new accounts, adding new customers, adding new products, whatever the case may be, if you add a new one to your source system, TrueSky will pick it up automatically and add it to these lists and put it into the appropriate positions as required. This is one of the things that we do that is trying to reduce the amount of effort it takes to maintain and run a budgeting cycle. We're going to handle these things automatically for you. You don't have to maintain two different solutions. So for the purposes of this presentation, I only want to work with one of my locations at this point. So I'm just going to grab the Seattle office. I'm going to go ahead and press the retrieve button. So now that I made my filter selections, the system's going out and it's bringing me back the data, the most up-to-date data that it has in the system, and rendering a template specifically for me and what I am allowed to see and to work with. I'm going to go ahead and close my filter pane here, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit to make some of this a little bit easier to see. First thing I want to let you know, even in the body of this document, we still enforce security. So as an example, if I don't get access to dues and subscriptions, and the person sitting next to me does, with the same assignment that's been rolled out to 2 different people, I might see it, the other person next to me might not. They might see it, I might not. Again, everything we do, even in the body, is enforced by security and that individual user. Now, The look, the feel, the layout, what's on rows, what's on columns, the color, the shading is going to be completely up to you and how you want the system to look and to feel. I am doing 12 months of budget, 12 months of actual, and 12 months of variance. Now you can have obviously multiple prior years of actual, multiple prior years of budget showing. Again, it's all up to you and how you want to configure the system. I'm budgeting on a monthly granularity, but we also support daily, weekly, quarterly, and yearly. And different business processes can be budgeted on a different time frame. So as an example, you might be able to do expenses on a monthly basis, but you might want to forecast sales revenue on a weekly basis. We also support things like 13 periods in a year, 445 calendar, and so forth. Now, I'm also entering on a calendar year, but kind of touching back to what I just said, we support multiple different calendars. So you can enter on a fiscal year, report on a calendar, enter on a calendar, report on a fiscal. Like I said, 445, the retail type calendar, 13 periods, 14 periods in a year, whatever you need to work with. Now, as an end user, I can come in and I can start typing in just like I can in Excel today. I can do direct entry, I can highlight, I can do a copy paste, I can do the fill down. And if you look at the formula I am typing, this is a true Excel formula. Your users don't have to learn any new type of syntax that is Excel-like. If they know Excel, they can work with TrueSky. And the moment I hit save, my numbers are saved to the backend database where they're instantly available to any other user to access them in real time. Obviously with the correct security, that is, but there is no document check-in, check-out, no emailing of Excel workbooks, no shared drives. Again, remember, everything we do is database driven. However, we're not just Excel, and we're not that wild, wild west of Excel. So if I try to come in here and delete an actual, you'll see that I'm locked out and prevented from changing actuals. If I tried to add a row or add a column, I'm prevented from doing that because those are the kind of things that break using Excel in a multi-user environment. However, if I am one of the kind of people that likes to use their color scales, I have that functionality available to me right then and there. So again, we've kept alive probably 99.9% of all of the Excel functionality and only restricted you where it's necessary in order to make Excel a much more functional multi-user budgeting and forecasting tool. However, we've also added a lot of additional features that help propel Excel into a multi-user budgeting and forecasting environment. The first one of those is audit trails. Now, audit trails is something that Excel by itself completely lacks. However, in TrueSky, anytime a user makes a change to a number, we track what was the change, what was the date and time, and who was the user that made that change, and what was the assignment in play when they made that change. This is one of our ways to help with that command and control, but also with accountability. No more dealing with, hey, I don't know where those numbers came from. You can't hold me accountable to those. With the audit trails, you'll have an exact buildup of how your numbers progressed over time, who entered what, and when did they enter them. And if you like one of those older numbers better, you can actually copy that back to the system. The next thing I'd like to talk about is what we call our notes feature. Now, a lot of you have probably in Excel done that right mouse click and added a comment or a note to some of your numbers. And what you've probably realized is that when you go to kind of roll up all of your dozens or hundreds of different Excel worksheets, none of those notes roll up, right? They're all embedded in the worksheet itself. Well, TrueSky has taken that concept and we've databaseized it, for lack of a better phrase. So our notes are actually tagged against the data element. They're stored in the database and they travel with the data element. So I can put a note on a budget number or an actual number, and then 6 months later when we're running an income statement, that same note will be available to me. So to add a note, all I do is go up here and click on Notes, and you can see that you can add multiple notes, and again, we tag it with who is the user, what was the date and time that they put the note in, and what was the note there. I can add as many different notes as I want, and again, different people working on the budget can add their own notes. You can also add electronic attachments. So if you have a backup business case in Word justifying this expenditure, you can use that. If maybe you have a vendor quote in PDF, you can attach it here. This notes feature is how we're trying to make budgeting and forecasting more collaborative. Getting everyone on the same page and avoiding all of those one-off emails and phone calls that go back and forth, while at the same time storing all of your important backup information in one central place where you can quickly and easily find it. No more trying to search through shared drives and trying to find documents that have gone missing and go through all of that hassle, all right? The notes, very powerful. Again, helping you get everyone on the same page. The next thing I'd like to talk about is our data tools. Now, the purpose of this data tools is twofold. One, it's to help get your people in and out of the system quicker. Again, budgeting and forecasting is something that you want to be doing more of, but again, to do that, you've got to make it go quicker. But at the same time, the secondary use of data tools is to help get you some better quality information. Now, these tools do a lot of different things. I'm just going to show you a few examples, but it's not the whole thing that data tools can do. So first of all, I'm going to expand out my 12 months here. Now, let's say I'm the kind of person that knows how much I want to spend across the whole year, but I don't want to go entering cell by cell by cell. So I can come up here and I can say, you know what? I'm going to put in $100,000. And now I've got some different choices here for my drop downs, and I'm going to say even. And now when I hit replace, you'll see it allocated that 100,000 across those 12 different cells. And if I highlighted a whole bunch of series of different cells and hit replace, it would know automatically how many cells I highlighted and do the math for me automatically. Okay, but maybe that's not quite how I want to allocate my money. Maybe you have some form of seasonality to your business. Okay, maybe you are a summer camp, or you are a ski resort where you've got highs and lows throughout the year. Well, instead of doing an even division, maybe you want to set up some of those seasonality rules. So now when I choose winter trend and I hit replace, you'll see that it allocated far more to the winter months and far less to the summer and spring. Again, very important to get this good trending, especially if you're ultimately going to drive this budget to get to a cash flow projected. Or maybe what you want to do is just base this year's on last year's actual. So with a touch of a button, I can actually trend my numbers this year to hit my 100,000 goal based on how my numbers were last year. Now, these tools can also do a couple other things. So I'm just going to copy and paste some numbers in here just to populate some more cells for us here. But let's say I've gone in and I've put in my budget and I look down here and I've said, okay, $57,000. Ooh, there's no way that my boss is going to accept that. You know, they're going to come back and say, you got to cut by 23.5%. So instead of me going cell by cell, I'm going to go up here and do 23.5. And now I'm going to choose percent. And now I'm going to hit decrease. And every time I hit decrease, my cells decrease by 23.5%. Or maybe I get the okay to go on a spending spree. I'm going to click 1,000 and choose value. And now every time I click, my numbers increase by 1,000. So again, these tools do a lot of different things, and there's even more that they do with the data tool. But I wanted to give you kind of an overview of those kind of things where we can help get your people in and out quicker and improve the quality of the data that you're working with. Now, up to this point in time, I've been showing you dollar-based entry, but I want to make sure everyone understands that we also support driver-based budgeting. So as an example of this, I'm going to expand out here, and now you can see that I can actually capture headcount as well. So we don't only allow you to put in dollars, but you can put in quantities, rates, units that you're going to sell. Really useful when you're doing revenue forecasting. And furthermore, a number entered into one area can automatically drive a number in another. So if I go down here and you look at kitchen and cleaning supplies, and if I try to change that number, you'll see that I'm locked out and prevented from doing it. But if I come up here and I change my headcount number, I'm going to go very large for this example, you'll see that my kitchen and cleaning supplies number changed automatically. So again, not only supporting dollar-based entry, but driver-based entry. And again, putting in one number into one section can affect numbers in another area. Places where this gets used a lot. I'm going to put in revenue forecasts for our product. I'm going to put in the number of units we're going to sell and the price per unit. And then automatically the system might calculate cost of goods for you. If you're going to put in headcount, that might automatically calculate something like an overhead for software or computer related equipment. So again, you're able to capture not just the dollars, but the drivers that go along with it. Again, something that's very important for when you're doing a lot of analytics and budgeting and forecasting. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is what we call line item details. So often when you're doing budgeting and forecasting, you've got a lot, I'm guessing, a lot of different sub-schedules that are going on. These are backup spreadsheets that get you to your final spreadsheet. And again, they're breaking down specific parts of the business and different sub-areas of the business. So here's a really good example I'd like to use. Employee training, okay? What makes up employee training? Well, odds are if you ask a department head to budget for employee training, what are they going to do? They're going to open up some kind of their own spreadsheet on their desktop. They're going to type in who's on their team, what are the classes they're going to take, what's the dollar amount going to be in what month. Then they're going to copy and paste those final numbers into your format and then go about their day. And then odds are what happens is all that great backup documentation, maybe it gets shared to a shared drive. Maybe it just stays on their desktop. Odds are it gets deleted, it gets forgotten about, no one knows where it's at. So later on when you're trying to do analysis, you don't have any data to fall back on into how did you get to these numbers. Well, we want to let you do all of that online. Again, one of our big tenets is trying to get everything centralized in your budgeting and forecasting process. So right here for employee training, I'm going to click my little expansion button here, and you'll see that we have budgeted for these 2 classes. Now I'm going to zoom in just a little bit, make it a little bit easier to see here, okay? So we budgeted for these 2 classes. Now if I wanted to budget for an additional class, on the fly I can come up here and click Add Detail, and I can type in the name of my class. This is free form data, so they can type in whatever information they want. And they go ahead and they put in the name and the amount. And now when I hit save, not only does it save all of my top line numbers to the database, but it also saves all of these detailed lines. So when I go to submit for approval, I can send this to my manager, and my manager right away, without having to try to hunt me down and find me or go back and forth with all these phone calls and voicemails or emails, can open this up and say, hey, Alan, I think you're going a little heavy on the training. I think you need to cut back. Or more importantly, 6 months from now, on a budget to actual report or an income statement, and you're doing your analytics, and you're trying to say, why are we so under budget on employee training? Well, without having to kind of find that shared drive, find those backup files, you'll be able to, at a click of a button, open this up and say, oh, well, we budgeted for Mark to go for these 2 classes, and Mark left the organization, and therefore we didn't have to send him on this training, which is why we are under budget. So again, part of that, getting everything centralized and into one area for all of your budgeting and forecasting. Now, as I've been entering information, you may have noticed that some of these icons on the side have gone from green to yellow to red. That is our visual clue that some form of data validation isn't happening when this person is doing data input. If you recall, if we go back to our instructions tab, you'll see that they were talking about increases of greater than 20% over last year are not acceptable. So in most organizations, you give some form of guidance. Now, TrueSky supports the concept of top-down budgeting, bottom-up budgeting, or a modified top-down, bottom-up kind of process. It's that third one where really what I'm talking about here, where upper management gives some form of guidance. You need to make these cuts, you need to make these kind of increases. And then they roll out the budget to their individual people. And they don't care how they get there as long as they hit those big targets. The problem is a lot of those targets go out in an email, and people are overwhelmed with email, and they see the email, but they miss it, they ignore it, they forget about it, right? Well, if you have those kind of rules, you can actually build that process into TrueSky. Now, these rules can be as broad or as narrow as you would like them to be. And as long as you can logically define them, you can build them into your process. So in my example here, I'm comparing what I'm budgeting this year against last year, okay? If I am a 0 to 10% increase, I've got a green. If I'm a 10 to 20% increase, I'm showing yellow. If I'm over 20, I'm showing red. Now I'm going to hit my validate button. And right here, you'll see that it gives me immediate feedback as to what is wrong with my numbers. Again, no more guessing and knowing, I'm getting that right away feedback. So now that I've got this can also be tied in with the workflow approval process. So if I've got greens across the board, great. It goes in clean. I can submit for approval, no problem. However, if I have yellows, maybe I get a warning message when I submit for approval saying, hey, you're a little bit outside of your boundaries. You might want to think about it, but we'll still let you submit for approval. But keep in mind, it might get rejected. Or if you really want to get control of the process, you can actually set the system up such that, hey, if you've got reds on the board, you can't even submit for approval because you're so far out of bounds that your numbers are going to get rejected anyhow, and you're just wasting everybody's time. So again, that's the validations function. And again, it's really helping you get control over your budgeting process, reducing the amount of time with all that back and forth, trying to get to your target numbers, and again, improving the quality of your numbers at the end of the day. So now I'm going to switch gears a little bit and take you from showing budgeting and forecasting and that data capture to how TrueSky does the deep dive analytics that kind of go hand in hand with this whole concept of corporate performance management. So let's say down here, 1.25 million. How did I spend 1.25 million last year? Well, In a lot of situations, I would have to stop what I'm doing, either pick up the phone or send an email to someone in the accounting and finance group, who then has to stop what they're doing, go into the ERP system, run some kind of report. Maybe it prints out as PDF. You got to kind of copy and paste that into Excel, maybe do some more manual manipulation, and send it back. Right, and this has a couple of problems. One, there's a time lag, right? This could take, hours or days before I get the information that I want. But two, it's also adding a lot of extra work to the accounting and finance group. So in the True Sky world, how about the concept where end users can do their own deep dive analytics back into the source system, whether that be your ERP or some other data source in there, and get the information on their own schedule. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to go to links, payables and PO details with summaries. And what the system's doing is making a real-time, up to the second call back to the source data system. I'm just going to expand this out a little bit. And now it's bringing back quite a little bit of information. Now, a couple things on this feature. First of all, we have security. So people are not getting into areas that they shouldn't. We also have logic. I'm not bringing back every expense account, only the accounts that pertain to the situation at hand. I'm not bringing back 10 years worth of information, only the information that is pertinent to me. But now that I've got this information, what can I do with it? And again, keep in mind, these different views can have different, whether it be payables or order entry, you can have a whole bunch of these different kinds of drill downs. So what can I do with this? Well, maybe I want to start sorting this data lowest to highest, or highest to lowest. Or, maybe that's still too much information for me to process. Maybe I just want to see my big ticket items. So what were my top 10 items that I purchased? And I don't like doing that math in my head. So now I'm going to click sum, and I can find out that my top 10 purchases came to about $25,000. Okay, that's great. That's one little view right there. But let me go ahead and clear that out and say, you know what? Maybe there's just, again, too much for me to get my head around here, right? So too many things. So I'm going to pull up here. I'm going to grab account name, and I'm not going to pull it up to here to account name. And now you can see that I've spent money on company cars, company meetings. Well, maybe I can throw my vendor in there as well. And I'll come down here, supply software. What did I do with software, right? Well, I spent money with Adobe, with CamSoft. Well, there's Mobile Warehouse. Well, there's a tablet purchase that I got booked to my software account. Or it got booked to my department when it was somebody else's purchase. So I'm giving this ability to do this own drill down on my own time. So I can continue this and actually even do my own ad hoc reporting, my own ad hoc analysis by going export to Excel. And now it's going to take this information, send it out to Excel, including all of the formatting that you have right here, where I can continue to do my own deep dive drill downs and my own analytics on it. So the goal of our drill down feature is to give everyone information at their fingertips that is up to the second. So if I want to do my analytics at 3 a.m. on a Sunday, I've got everything I need at my fingertips. And we're taking a lot of the workload off of the accounting and finance group and freeing them up for more value-added things to work on. So we've talked about budgeting and forecasting, and we've talked about deep dive analytics. And now I want to take a minute to talk about reporting. True Sky can report on any data that we have in the system. That could be sales forecasting, it could be FTE and headcount type reports, or it could even be financial statements. So here's an example up on screen of an income statement. Now these are presentation quality. You can print these out, you can email these as well, and like everything else in True Sky, you're going to get to determine what's on rows, what's on columns, how many years of actual, how many years of budget, and so forth. But we also have some additional features here. So I'm going to expand out on my projected right here. And you can see that I am bringing back 4 months of actual and 8 months of budget, right? So I can end up seeing where I'm going to be at the end of the year on my projection. Now, reporting within True Sky can be set up to have intelligence in it, such that it knows what month we're in. And next month, it could automatically add 1 more month of actual and drop off a month of budget. So all your reports can cycle forward automatically. Or if you want to have reports that show this year's number and then the same period 12 months ago, reports like that can be created as well. So you're going to be able to determine that level of detail. Now I'm going to go up here. I'm also going to expand my groupings down the side here. And you can see that these reports can be set up to do a different mix of groupings, such as product revenue, which is kind of a roll-up. But down here, cost of goods, I'm bringing back individual GL accounts. I'm going to scroll down here. And even here is administrative expenses. So if I expand this out, you'll see I've got all the other GL accounts that I was working with earlier when I was showing you budgeting and forecasting. And from any of these areas here, I can do the exact same drill downs that I was talking about earlier. So again, even in a reporting world, you've got the ability to drill down back to the source data. And I can also add notes. So if people want to explain in a reporting environment, why their actuals are so high or so low, not just the budget numbers, but even the actuals, you can add notes on the reports as well. So again, with TrueSky, you're going to get budgeting and forecasting, deep dive analytics, as well as reporting. The final thing I want to talk about is the fourth use of TrueSky. I've shown you budgeting and forecasting, deep dive analytics, reporting, and now I want to talk a little bit about dashboarding. So within TrueSky, you can create different kinds of dashboards. Now, these dashboards can be more than just pretty pictures and charts and graphs. You can also use them for what-if type analysis. So I have one here that's very financial based. And you can see that we're showing kind of what our trend of revenue is, projected versus actual, and so forth for revenue, compensation, expenses, and ultimately at the end of the day, how our net income goes. But let's say we want to play around with some of the numbers here. Well, let's see, maybe we can increase revenue. I know we can't do it because we've got to put some plans in place. We can't do it until August, but you know what? Maybe we could actually double our revenue. So we're going to put in 100% there, okay? And now you can see how that affects the revenue and ultimately the net income. But we know everyone's kind of clamoring for a raise, so we're going to click here and say, okay, we're going to have to give them a raise. We can probably push that off until May, and everyone's going to get a really big raise, so they're going to be happy about that. So what happens to our compensation budget right there, as well as our net income? But you know what? We know we can go on a hardcore cost-cutting spree here. So we're going to cut down our expenses. We're going to cut everything down by 50%. And so now I can see how our budget, our what if, and our actual forecast is all going to trend and what's going to happen with our net income at the end of the day. So again, TrueSky gives you a lot of different components that you can work with, right? You can do budgeting and forecasting, you can do deep dive analytics, you can do reporting, you can do dashboarding. When you deploy TrueSky, you're going to get all of this functionality, and you can choose to deploy any or all of it depending on how your organization needs to function.
All right. Well, thanks for watching that demo. Again, just a quick recap of some of the things that TrueSky can do. You just saw kind of an overview. We used the expense budget as an example, but just a reminder, we can handle pretty much any business process from budgeting, planning, and forecasting through to reporting, analytics, and dashboarding as well. To quickly summarize what you saw, TrueSky gives you kind of the power and strength of Excel, along with added control, all those different features and functionality that you saw in the demo that Alan just provided, to ultimately get one version of the truth with centralized control, actionable information, reduced risk, and the ability to avoid surprises. So we do appreciate your time reviewing TrueSky with us. If you're interested in learning more, feel free to reach out to the email on screen, info@truesky.com. We typically start with a quick discussion, understand what you're looking to do, answer kind of initial questions. Then we can do another demo if you're interested, followed by a scope review, understanding what you need, how we're going to make that happen, and what the scope of work looks like. And then we'll provide you with a proposal of how to get TrueSky up and running. Thanks again. We do appreciate your time and hope to hear from you soon. Take care.